Internet, and welcome to the Phat Games podcast. This is our final episode of the season, episode 14. It's just Gary and I. We have no guests this week, and we're going to just chat about what our plans are for the podcast for 2022, and also talk about Kids of Karendow, talk about our game, where we what we did with it in 2021 and what we have planned for it in 2022. So I think, Gary, you and I want to sort of start with the podcast. Is that correct?
Yeah, let's start with the podcast.
But maybe let me start by commenting on your wonderful virtual background. You are advertising for us very nobly.
Well, yes, I was kind of getting sick of seeing my my own house. So, here's a virtual background that I'll use for now.
Yeah, so
like just kind of before we started recording, we talked about getting new hardware for the next season. I'm probably going to move my setup upstairs, and that way, whoever's watching the video kind of portion of our podcast has something to see in the background, I guess.
And we got to get you a mic, and we should both get those circle lights that all the podcasters seem to use.
Well, some sort of lighting setup. It doesn't necessarily have to be
lights. Yeah, that's right. Not necessarily that kind of lighting, but some kind of better lighting setup.
Yeah,
definitely. So yeah, as Gary just mentioned, the new hardware. I just got the M1 Pro. Yeah, one of the things Gary and I have been talking about is sort of the engagement we've had in the podcast. I mean, in general, our YouTube subscribers are pretty low. As of the recording of this, we are at a whopping 37. The viewership of the YouTube videos are kind of all over the place and really depends on our guests and their ability to promote to their networks as well. Our most watched episode was our very, very first one, just the first part. I think it was because it was novel for people who knew us back in the day to see us randomly talking on the internet. And in the next most watched one was the podcast with Red Vonix. And I think that had a lot to do with the porn games hashtag, as I've mentioned before. Our audio listeners have been increasing. I mean, in the beginning, there was virtually none. But as we've gone along, they're actually steadily increasing, not huge numbers, but they're always consistent. And there may be always, every podcast is one or two new listens that we didn't get before. So something's going on there. I mean, it is on a lot of platforms. So I think maybe some of our friends are just listening to it a couple times. But the viewership or listenership is gradually increasing. So that's great. Hopefully, we can kick it off and make it really popular in season 2. We're also gonna dial back the interviews, right, Gary?
Yeah, that's not to say that I didn't really enjoy them. I really did. I thought there was a lot of really awesome things being.
We had a lot of great guests.
Yeah,
I think some guests, not to dig on any of our guests, some guests were more entertaining than others. I think that's fair to say. And it also depended on the subject matter. And I think some of the AAA stuff that we talked about when we had Doug and Zach on, I think got some engagement from people who are Googling that or looking up that. And also, well, Zach has a pretty big follower base on Instagram and stuff, and that helped get some viewership there. But I did notice some increased engagement on AAA topics.
Yeah, that sounds natural.
But we are going to change it to more of edutainment type stuff, more of a panel discussion. We'll come in with a 1, 2, maybe 3 topics per podcast, have a couple people come on with us who maybe work in the indie game industry or are aspiring indies such as ourselves, possibly people who we've already had on in the first season. And we're going to sort of keep it focused on specific topics, and hopefully we'll attract current game developers. Also, aspiring indie game developers and just people who are generally interested in the process, and maybe even some game players. Maybe we can even do an episode on like game devs versus hardcore game players, and see what that's like, because those are two different worlds.
I'd like to see an episode where we get a bunch of our friends to play Kids of Karendow and they can shoot it down or see them enjoy it, I guess. That'd be fun.
Oh yeah, so, like we record our reactions to them playing.
Or, well, we record their reactions to them playing. They can side comment, I guess.
Well, I would say we record their reactions and then we react to their reactions. That would be kind of cool. Maybe that should be our season finale for season 2.
Yeah. And then more, maybe we can do a full series where they play a bunch of indie games.
Yeah, or if we could do that. Yeah, that's a great idea. Depending on how many episodes we do for season 2, we could see what level of effort that would be, and what that would take. We would need to make sure everyone has appropriate hardware to do video capture, though, because as we learned in season 1 with the video capture we did of Kids of Karendow, my laptop sucks. The new one is freaking awesome, though. This one, I re-recorded the podcast logo, and no frame rate issues. It's smooth as butter, baby.
Well, in my mind, I was thinking you just do it at Gumbo, and then maybe I'll have a little session here. That way, nobody really needs to have hardware. It's just you and me.
What do you mean?
Well, I don't know.
Just sit with the guys, and
that means you just do it right at Gumbo or something.
But that would also be very friendly for the audio portion of the podcast. So we maybe would have to keep that toned down. And we did it a couple times, but that would be YouTube only.
I'm just throwing ideas.
I mean, I like the idea. We just need to see if we're going to be like, screw you audio listeners, and just focus on the YouTube side for an episode or two. I wouldn't want to do that frequently, though, because I think audio is going to continue to grow and have a more consistent following over time. Because like I said, YouTube's all over the place.
But I was thinking, like, as a kind of a side benefit, that we get free feedback for our game.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. So maybe this wouldn't be a podcast episode. Maybe this would be Phat Games TV. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Do something on Twitch even. Now I got better hardware. I can stream the development again, although I don't know if I will. I really don't know if I like doing that. We would also like to invite Dan Butchko of Playcrafting, and also Gamer X, or the board of Gamer X, to join us in the podcast in season 2. I would love to interview those two sets of people. It'd be great to have them on, talk a little bit about their contribution to game development and the game community at large. They both groups, or both people, or however you want to frame it, have done a lot in New York, and really for Gamer X kind of around the world.
Have you talked to any of those people about getting them on?
Not yet, no. I saw Dan for the first time in a while at Gumbo's Halloween party.
Oh,
so I'd like to reach out. No, I did not. No. I'm also not in any of the pictures because I left kind of early because I had dinner plans.
Doesn't sound like much of a Halloween party for you.
I had drinks. That counts.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
All right, G, anything else you want to talk about along the podcast, or do you want to get into the game?
Yeah, we can talk about the game.
All right. So
retrospective, Blair.
Retrospective on 2021.
Yeah.
2021 was our 3rd year-ish of Kids of Karendow. Let's see, 2018, 2019. Okay, geez. This was pretty much our 4th year, darn it, of this game's going to take forever, of game development. It's also been the most productive year. In January, we hired Thunder Noise, which is Sondolo's studio, to start doing graphics for us, and that has taken a lot of the burden off of, me, really, to get a lot of those graphics done. And him and his team have been doing some great work for us, and it's just going to continue on. I've talked to him already about continuing that partnership long term for as long as it takes to get this game done, hopefully. What else did we do this year? we actually created 6 new areas for the game for the literally like the first 3 years it took us to build out, like just like the engine and Pandaka Prison, which is the first area in the game. And then we did Poogle, the Resistance Caves, the Resistance Base, Shadagoya Forest, Nach Canegra, and the Nach Canegra Graveyard, the Kailak, all these crazy like names that are inspired by Klingons and Star Trek. And we're already working on the next area, or the next sort of set of cutscenes after that, which we slow the gameplay down a lot and do a lot of character development, focus on the first 4 main characters. There's going to be more than 4 main characters in the game, and dive in their backstory, do some cutscenes, some flashbacks, and talk about why they are the way that they are. And instead of always just sort of nonstop go, go, go action, which the first 2 hours of the game really is.
I'm actually looking forward to that part of the game.
Me too. I've been working on some of the assets for Telly's scene. I want to desaturate everything so it's not quite grayscale, but it's, you know, washed out. So it seems more emotional when we, no spoilers here, but when we do some big reveals about why Telly is the way Telly is and what's happened to him in his past. So it's kind of excited about writing that scene, actually.
As am I, because I think I remember the first time I talked to you about, I guess, Telly's backstory. This was when I was in New York.
Yep.
Visiting in 2019.
Yep.
We were actually in Central Park, wasn't it?
We were sitting down at one of the restaurants there, having a glass of wine, just chatting about the game. And yeah, you came up with the idea of what we were gonna do, and it's been one of the most exciting points, I think, for the first few hours of the game. A sort of a big development point for the character of Telly.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be really good. In the original game, I don't think his story was fleshed out that much.
We really only did Elmo's.
Right.
Yeah, this game is going to have a lot of really fleshed out characters with some pretty rich backgrounds.
Yeah, but yeah, like I know you sent out some screenshots today on our Discord.
Yeah, or earlier, a couple days ago.
Facebook as well.
And I posted them on Instagram. Good. Yes, we've so check out our Instagram. We posted some new artwork from some of the upcoming cutscenes that I'm working on, and also of the town Nach Canegra. There's this scene where Elmo is completely naked. It is censored, but why is he naked? Well, you have to play the game to find out. All right.
It's a really cool scene. I'm just surprised that, like, you know, the 2 kind of like more major characters in the background, Ammon and whoever that other chiefess was.
Her name is Kashla.
Kasha, yeah. They should have a surprise look too, I think.
Oh yeah, I guess. Oh.
Except for the guards. I think it's the guards not making any facial expressions is pretty cool.
Oh, I guess we could. I guess I could change the cutscene to do that. They've all got the only Kasha doesn't have the surprise animation, but that's pretty easy to draw. And that would be funny.
Yeah, I think it would be funny just like have the guards, like one of them stone face and then one's just like kind of looking.
We could do the little heart view on them, you know, make everyone in this game gay.
Well, that reminds me of one of the scenes you had in Virgo's Bounty, the gay strip club.
Oh yeah. when you buy the zombie reversal spray and turn all the zombies into go-go dancers.
Jeez.
Yeah, that game was weird.
Oh well, I think Virgo's Bounty was supposed to be weird.
It was.
Yeah.
Kids of Karendow has got weird stuff in it too, but it's also got a really solid story as an underpinning to it. So it's as we've been saying, it's a funny, or it's a game with a serious story, but with funny characters to sort of cut through some of the more serious elements. It's and we don't do a lot of, or really any, fourth wall breaking humor, so we try to keep it contextual and within the game, so it doesn't, because that can get kind of tacky sometimes.
Yeah, well, you definitely don't want to overdo it.
Yeah, it's got to have a good balance, and I think it's got a good balance so far.
I think it does, yeah.
So what else are we doing, Gary? Did I already say we're getting a social media manager to help us out, hopefully?
We did. What's our approach to finding one?
No idea. I originally was going to ask people at Gumbo. I got one lead, but apparently this person is not taking on new clients, so we'll have to keep trying. I'm sure if I post it to, maybe we can find it on Reddit. That's where we found Sondolo. Maybe social media managers on there, or maybe like one of those like websites where you just hire people on an hourly basis to do stuff.
Well, I would say, well, I don't know, how are we thinking about compensation?
Yeah, we have to put together a budget for that.
Yeah, because I don't know, in my mind, it's like, I don't think it's worthwhile to hire someone full time. Like
No,
I've seen businesses do that, and most of the time it's just them sitting around not really knowing what to do and not really having a direction. But I think like to pay someone like hourly and just have them commit to doing like, I don't know, like a couple hours a week, or
Yeah,
fitting.
we would need to sort of do some trial and error and figure out which works best and gets the most engagement. It would be nice if they could do a little bit of promotion to get more people in the Discord as well. And then maybe that role could pivot to community manager or something. I don't know if we actually get a following. I don't know. Our Discord is still pretty silent.
Yeah, or maybe, you know, I'm thinking maybe we can partner up with other game developers that also need a social media manager, and we can just hire one for all of us.
It would be nice if we could do like a Gumbo shared social media manager that helps. Maybe we hire a couple of them and does all of our games.
Yeah, maybe.
That would be interesting. It'd be something kind of cool to propose to them. It's a good idea.
Just throwing out ideas, man.
It's a good one. People can hear us brainstorm, figure shit out.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to do a new game trailer in 2022. If you recall, our original announcement trailer had one area, had some artwork issues. We changed the resolution on basically all the character and enemy sprites since that trailer, and we don't really show a lot. We show you walking.
Yeah, it's starting to. It's really starting to age. You know.
Yep.
Let's talk about what your ambitions are for this new trailer.
I want to show. Basically all the elements that we have in the game. So I want to sort of show combat system. I want to show the overworld. I want to show the mini games that we built out in 2022. I want to show the resistance base. I want to show the cutscenes we have in Karendow Capital, where we're zooming in the cityscape, because I think that looks really cool. I want to show, focus more on some of the more visual elements of the game now that we have a lot more. The game is starting to look more pretty. I'm also that's kind of off topic from the game trailer, but I might have Sondolo redo some of the combat backgrounds as well, because he's doing something for one of the cutscenes we're doing right now. It looks pretty cool. All right, back to the cutscene, or sorry, not the cutscene, the trailer. What else do we want to see in it? What else do you want to see in it?
I don't know. It's maybe let's talk about, you know, you say you want to show all these things, but like, I don't know, is there like going to be like any story element to this trailer, or he's gonna randomly show a bunch of cutscenes, I guess?
Well, we should focus on some of the more story aspect cutscenes and some of the humor. So we should lean into humor. That was the advice that we got from Dean in season 1 here, and I agree with that. We should also focus on some of the more serious story elements, so our players or potential players can at least see this game isn't just all like shits and giggles, that there actually is substance on top of it. But I think that will also, and then we'll layer on the different gameplay elements on top of that, so the player can see, well, not only is the story looking kind of fun and interesting, but we have some fairly deep gameplay elements to it as well. Like the magic, the combos, the skill system, all that is pretty cool for combat. The mini games, the resistance-based build out, which is coming in, which we'll be building out in 2022, which is a resource management mini game, which I think is really cool. At least in my mind, it's cool. So hopefully it's cool in reality too.
Well, if it's cool in your mind, it's good enough.
Yep. All right, G, what else we got?
Okay, so we talked about trailer, talked about retrospective of the game in 2021. I don't know. Let's talk about
How's the
2022.
music? Oh, you want to talk about 2022 more? Well,
Yeah.
I talked a little bit about the resistance based minigame. That we're going to be actually building a lot of the side quests out in 2022. We're going to be building out a couple other smaller mini games. We are going to be building out one of the larger areas in the game. For those who listened to the podcast or played the original Kids of Karendow back in the year 2000, so many years ago, there was this location in the game called the AI Repair Tower. It is making an appearance in this version of Kids of Karendow. It's much bigger. It's much more intense. It is like a pivotal moment in the game when bad shit goes down. And that should be built out in 2022 as well. And it's generally speaking, now if we, I don't know, are we still planning on doing this? I have no idea. But Gary and I had before talked about doing an early access release on Steam. If we decide to do that, I suspect by the end of 2022, we'd be pretty close to ready to releasing that. And the early access content would end with the AI Repair Tower, which is probably, I want to say, just, I mean, it's not even that much of the game. It's about just under a third of the game's content. Just under. There's actually pretty close to a third. That's a pretty significant milestone. Like there's two things. Okay, spoiler alert.
How long do you think it would take the player to play through that content?
That's a good question. So in the map that I've created, the timeline that I've created for the game, I expect that there's going to be about 20 to 25 hours of gameplay, but that's the best estimate I have that doesn't include any side quests. And I could be wrong about that because some of the stuff I'm discovering is taking longer even for me to play through it. So I want to say that we could be looking about 5 hours, which when I say the game's nearly a third done doesn't really match up to what I just said. So I really don't know. Let's say between 5 and 10 hours.
Okay, that's fair. That's a nice little chunk for a demo. Well, this is the season finale. I just kind of wanted it to be a little bit more casual. You know what I mean? Like I like in retrospect, I felt like really stiff throughout most of the podcast. So
that's actually a reasonable thing to bring up. I think with more of a panel style discussion, we can keep it more casual. It'll be less scripted. We can just go with the flow.
I think that's something to be desired, I guess, both from our end and the audience.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be more interesting, get more engagement. I was talking to someone at Gumbo this week, and he listened to the opening sequence of the part 1 of Zach Zinger's podcast, and that's when he talks about the guy on shrooms who contracted him to turn whatever he was doing on a keyboard into something orchestral. And I guess that pulled him in and made him want to come back and listen to the podcast after. So that worked.
Okay. Yeah.
It was good to sort of edit that in such a way that we put it at the front. Imagine that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if all our podcasts are going to be about like doing shrooms and making music.
No, it gets kind of boring after a while. It's always about the same thing.
Speaking about the music, I had a chance to look through the Trello board. And I'm going to say that I think the way I'm going to approach 2022 is going to be very different than the way I approached 2021.
What does that mean?
Basically, what I want to do is I'm going to take all those songs and I want to do them within 2022. And then I'm going to use 2023 to make sure the quality is good on all of
them. Okay. So more of an iterative approach.
Yeah. So, before we started recording, I was kind of telling you that I moved my piano into my room. So I did that because I find that like if it's close to me, I'll play it a lot more. So I've been having some really good sessions in there, just fooling around and figuring out, things I want to do with the soundtrack and stuff. So I think it would be good to just kind of like lay down a lot of the ideas and then just slowly flush them out, I guess, over time.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
I'm definitely looking forward to listening to your music.
Yeah.
As you know, I love your music.
Yes, I know, Blair.
I love it so much, Gary.
So I guess what I really didn't see in the boards were like character themes.
Yeah, I didn't really.
I think I'm going to have some.
Though.
I think I am going to make some. Like I let you hear Elmo's main theme song, I think the last time we talked. So we'll have to figure out a place for that.
We will probably use it in more than one place.
Yeah.
And we also need at some point some kind of sad song.
Yes.
How's the drug scene music coming along?
The what?
The drug scene music. How's that coming
along? Oh man, I have no idea what I want to do for that. I think like the last time we talked, we were going to kind of base it off a song that you made from the Haunted Mansion. So I'm going to incorporate that. I'm going to incorporate that melody in there somehow. I just don't know what I'm going to do for like style yet.
Gary, how did that song go?
Oh geez, I don't know. I have to go play through the game again. I can get like DOSBox or something and just
DOSBox doesn't work very well for me anymore. Or maybe it's just a Mac thing, but the song went do 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 do.
You're gonna keep that in the
oh yeah, definitely.
In the video. Okay, yeah. Especially you should have seen like the video when you did that. It was funny. But I don't know. What do you think of it being kind of like a funk type song? What are we thinking in terms of like style, I guess?
Funk sounds good. I honestly didn't know. I mean, as Zach said when we talked to him last week, or 2 weeks ago, whenever that was, he likes it when he has creative control. So, G, it's all yours.
Yeah, sometimes I don't like having too much creative control because then things can kind of go wherever, right? So I think a nice balance between both for me probably works best. Because, honestly, when I did the original Karendow soundtrack, it could have turned out very differently if it was just me deciding what to do. But because I had a little bit of direction, it turned out the way it did. And I actually really liked the way it turned out because of that.
As do I. What about Virgo's Bounty title screen?
Okay, yeah, I was thinking, like a little bit of funk, just like Virgo's Bounty title screen. Okay.
Because that was the Virgo's Bounty in general had some implicit drug use. This one's a little more explicit.
No, it didn't. Not after you changed it.
The brownies were magic.
Yeah, but the original scene was he was doing a joint. He was like smoking a joint.
Yeah, he was smoking a bong. Actually, he was. Yeah, it was a little too explicit.
That was fun.
Although
I actually really like the Virgo's Bounty soundtrack.
Yeah, and I like the story in Virgo's Bounty. The levels were too hard. If we ever go back and revisit that game for like Switch or Mac or PC or whatever, we need to maybe address that. Although it would be way easier to play with a gamepad than it would be on the touchscreen. So that could also solve some of the problems too.
Well, it's not like the puzzles were too hard. Actually, like all the hard puzzles were actually really good. It was just there was probably not a good linear progression in terms of like difficulty, which you tried to address as time went on. But the original game
was just crazy.
was actually really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I got a little off topic there, going back to the Virgo's Bounty days. Yeah, it's still a good game. I haven't played it in a while. Panic mode is a problem. But
I didn't really like arcade mode. I actually really liked it as a puzzle game. Something that you can do like while you're on the toilet.
Yeah, I would probably if we did revisit it, well, now I'm getting temptations, but we still have many years left on Karendow. But break up story mode, so you could either do strict story with puzzles or strict story with panic, or you could do the mix. And then maybe I'd keep the standalone puzzle and standalone panic modes that are already in the game. You know, I think people like it when they can customize their experience as much as possible. Oh, that takes me back to Kids of Karendow. I think I can say safely that Kids of Karendow is the most customizable JRPG that I think has ever been made. And why do I say that?
Yeah,
Well,
why do you say that?
the game allows you to change the combat speed, which inherently changes the difficulty of combat. The game allows you to turn active time battle on or off, and that's not so unique. But what is unique, you can turn combat on and off whenever you want as well. And yes, that will be a balancing challenge, but I'm working on it. We'll get it sorted out. The interesting thing is also you really get to manage the game's difficulty any way you see fit. So if you die at a boss fight, the game will immediately let you retry or retry with a level boost. So it would bypass any grinding. It's completely optional. Who knows if people will choose to grind if they're underpowered, or if they'll just, take the cheap way out and bump up their character stats. I think probably depending on their mood that day, it could be either or. What else do I let you configure? What else do I let us configure, Gary?
What was it? I think you mentioned everything. It's like combat is like almost optional, I guess, if the player
Yes,
chooses, right?
combat is entirely optional if you want. But
think-
you don't get some of the bonuses, because in each area, if you kill all the enemies, you get an extra bonus. So you don't get that bonus if combat's turned off.
Well, that's kind of a good thing, I guess. Like you want to reward the people that want to like play the game, right?
Oh yeah, and the other thing is when you kill an enemy, they're dead forever. However, you can go into the menu and trigger the respawn of enemies in certain areas. So that gives you an additional level of control over how you want to experience combat as well.
How do you do that exactly? Like through a menu?
Yeah, it's through the menu.
I wonder if we should change that to like something interactive within the game.
Like make it
like an orb that respawns enemies.
Yeah, maybe we can tweak that. I mean, the functionality's there. I thought that from the menu, it was more about controlling it whenever you want to do it versus having to find some orb that makes you or lets you do it.
Yeah, something to think about anyway.
Yep. So I think, as far as I'm aware, that allows for some of the most configuration in an RPG, in a JRPG that I'm aware of. I mean, I don't know if you know otherwise, Gary.
No, I don't know otherwise, but I do like the idea of it, just because, there's a lot of different reasons that people play RPGs. So some people want like a really full experience where, the combat is a really big thing for them. For other people, story is a big thing. So, let's say you don't really have time to, grind through battles and stuff, but you really want to enjoy the story.
Yep.
It's kind of cool that you can just kind of, I don't know, lower the difficulty and
It gives us
experience the game, in that, through that lens.
It gives us the broadest possible JRPG market that I think we can get, as an an indie studio making an indie game that's probably in general way too big of scope for us, but we're doing it anyway.
Yep, scope creep is what we're all about.
None of this was scope creep, it was all planned. It's just still really big.
Okay, yeah.
That's what I always say when people say that. It's like, no, this is planned. We're just crazy.
Yeah, well, I think you've always been known to be quite ambitious in a good way.
I'm also crazy about I'll get things done, even when it's hard. All right. I don't want to record too much longer here because I want to keep this a single part.
All right.
So, any final words, Gary?
2021 was a really cool slice because that's when we started this whole podcast thing. I think I really enjoyed it. I think I'm looking forward to 2022 when we continue doing it. Yeah.
Me too. So I think the podcast will resume in the March or April timeframe, basically 1 year from when we first premiered season 1. However, in the interim, we'll have 13 weeks of content, or maybe more, maybe less, depends on how we release them. But what we're doing is we're going to re-release all the episodes as a full length episode instead of breaking up in the individual parts. And that way, some of the people who want to listen to the audio platform is a full nonstop experience they can, and maybe those on YouTube as well. Just sort of, also reminds people what we did a few months ago. You can re-listen to episode 1, which was one of the most painful episodes I've ever edited. Never record a podcast drunk and ramble all over the place because, my God, that was ugly. But hey, it worked.
Hey, man, we learn, right? I think we began first episode, we were always drinking because this all started off with like me and Blair just meeting every Wednesday and just chatting and drinking. So we just kind of decided to record it.
That was how the podcast came to fruition. And then we actually got worried about our content after that. And then it became something else. All right. That's it for this wonderful season finale of the podcast. Thanks for joining us, Internet. And we will see you in season 2. Thanks for joining us on the Phat Games podcast this season. Gary and I forgot to mention that we've been waitlisted for a MegFest booth, but we will still both be there, and we will definitely be showing at the show and tell. Everyone should stop by and check out Kids of Karendow. The Phat Games podcast will return in January with full episodes from season 1, with season 2 to follow. If you like our content, please consider liking this episode and subscribing to our channel. Hit the bell icon so you get notifications of future episodes. See you next year.